How you doing? It's the Butcher here, and today I have a video on the build that I'm calling Andy's Bomb. It basically revolves around several different things, but one of the main things is utilizing the poison explosion from Andariel's Visage. So first things first, I have to give a huge shout out to Xarrio, who posted the original idea for this video. I'm going to link it down in the description, and it's an extremely unique and extremely good build. So he's basically the grandfather of this build of what I'm calling Andy's Bomb, but he's the grandfather of it. So full credit goes to him for figuring out this build. And again, it'll be linked down in the description. I highly suggest you check out his version. This is my version, however, and there's going to be a couple key changes that I make that I think personally elevates the build, and I will go over those changes and show them off to you guys. So first things first, let's jump into the skill tree. And as I get to those changes, like I said, I'll highlight them and tell you why I'm making said change. But first thing, we're taking Puncture into Fundamental. One, because we really need the Vulnerable for our key passive, and two, because it gives us 3 blades that can Lucky Hit. And Lucky Hit is going to be huge for this build. So now we're coming down here, we're taking 3 into Sturdy. We don't really need Siphoning Strikes because we get the healing from Andy's. Taking 3 into Stutter Step just for some more movement speed. This is going to be primarily built for the Gauntlet. I feel like that's really, I mean, you can clear 200s with this, and you'll see. I think I have one. I'm trying to run regular dungeons for this and not vaults, because you will see, I think hopefully the one I have has a boss, because you will see that is the weakness of the build, just straight up. But next we have Flurry, and we're taking this for a couple reasons. The main reason is the combo points give us attack speed, which is super important. That's what we need. And where you can see we're only taking 1 point into this because the damage isn't actually really coming from the Flurry. It does help, but it's not really the main source of the damage. Then we're taking that into Enhance so we can keep healing. We do have a ton of healing in this build. And then Advance for the stun. Specifically, you really want to be constantly evading through enemies, so you're constantly stunning them and help with survivability. And it's also very crucial against bosses because we really need to stagger them to start doing big damage. So coming over here, we are taking Shadow Step, and we're taking this into Discipline to keep its cooldown as low as possible so we can keep spamming it for our Tibalt's Will. We're taking 3 points into Weapon Mastery for some more damage. Taking 5 points into Concealment, we have leftover points to get the cooldown as low as possible. This is one, mainly for the Unstoppable, and two, it's also very nice for, you'll hit movement speed cap with this, and you'll be able to zip through different areas with Concealment as well too. And we're taking 5 to get that cooldown down. Like I said, we have extra points in this build. There's not a ton of places to put them in, but if you want to put them somewhere else, feel free to. Down here, we're taking Exploit, 3 into Exploit, 3 into Malice. We're taking 1 into Shadow Imbuement into the Mixed Shadow Imbuement. We're taking 1 into Poison Imbuement into the Mixed Poison Imbuement. We are taking Deadly Venom, 3 points into that, 3 points into Debilitating Toxins, then 1 point into Alchemist's Advantage, 3 points into Frigid Finesse, and 3 points from our Amulet, very important right there. Then we're taking 2 points into Intervention, 3 points into Alchemist's Fortune, 3 points into Second Wind, 1 point into Adrenaline Rush, mainly to get down to Haste. And then for our key passive, one of the major changes is Xarrio rolls with Close Quarter Combat. I am rocking Victimize, and you'll kind of see get these constant explosions that'll just deal to this basically constant explosion damage we have from like 3 other different sources. This is just a 4th source of it, and they just nerf this into the ground so heavily. The attack speed is still nice, but the 10% of your damage is crowd controlled is tough, and I found myself getting better clear speeds and more damage with the Victimize key passive right here. So probably the first build you maybe seen I've ever used Victimize, but it's actually quite good here. So now moving over to the gear, like I mentioned, first things first, Andy's, it's really our main source of damage. Having that cause the poison, that'll lead to some other source of damage, but Andariel's Visage, this is a build that requires an Uber Unique. The second one, we do have a second Uber Unique down here. It's not required, but it is very helpful. So yes, this is a niche build, but it is a way to use, at least Andariel's is probably like the least that and Melted Heart are like the two least, what would you call it? Like sought after uber uniques. So it's at least a way to use those, and it is actually really good. So for our chest piece here, we're using just a defensive chest piece. We want total armor. I like running life on there, so we get a nice bonus out of our Doombringer, and then 2 DR things. This actually isn't a great chest piece at all, to be honest. And then another thing about this build is I'm actually using 0 defensive aspects on this entire build. And I'm running with, this will go up a little. I actually don't have some of my glyphs fully leveled, but 11.5k armor. I've been running with that for a lot of builds, even in tier 100s, and as long as you're killing things fast enough, it seems to be fine. So it is what it is. But on here, we're using Frostbitten, and this is another big change. And we are using this because of the second part. So we don't care about the grenades. We want to deal 25% multiplicative critical strike damage against frozen enemies. That is our key, and that is one of the reasons why you'll see we'll be scaling crit as another part of this build as well too. That's one of the reasons why we're going to be scaling crit. So that's an aspect that I use that he doesn't use on his build, and this is just leading to, so we are going to be a bit squishy, and I wouldn't recommend this for hardcore, but as if we're talking like top clear times for the Gauntlet, I think that's the way to go. Frostburn on the gloves here for the chance to freeze. I really like one with a better attack speed roll, but I have to go farm that. Pants here to Balt's Will. That's why we're spamming the Shadow Step and Concealment to keep this up as much as possible. I kind of like saving the Concealment to get out of CC or run between groups because of the movement speed, and then using the Shadow Step within groups to keep this to Balt's Will and this damage bonus up as much as possible. So for boots here, we are running Shared Misery to spread that freeze along with some of our other crowd control effects like Slow Round. And then we want, I would personally recommend attacks reduce evades cooldown by 1.5 or 1.2 seconds. We're attacking so fast so you basically have constant evade, and like I mentioned before, you want to be evading through enemies so you're able to stun them with your flurry. But on here we want movement speed, we want cold, lightning, and shadow. And normally I would say just triple resist, but we specifically want those 3 ones. I actually need a better roll on cold here as well too. As you can see, I'm actually slightly not armor or resistance capped. That's because I need a better roll on cold here, and this needs to be a fire ring if you want to be fully res capped. If not, you'll just be slightly also. It's really not that big of a deal, honestly. And then I think I mentioned movement speed as well too. We're super fast with this build. So now for our crossbow right here, we're using a crossbow as our 2-hander. Oh, I actually have, sorry. I actually have the wrong thing on. We want aspect of the elements on here, and that's not how you spell elements. Please tell me. Okay, nice. I do have one. So I'll explain that as we're running over. So you can see we have all stats, crit, vulnerable, and damage over time. We don't actually have dexterity, but we don't really need it because, like I said, that's not really where our damage is coming from, our actual like skill damage. So we actually don't use dexterity. We use all stats. We're actually, even with the really low roll on this, we're able to hit every single rare Paragon node in our board on 6 different boards, which is pretty impressive and pretty nice, mainly because you can see how high that strength is, which allows us to hit it. So that's very nice to have. The crit, like I said, we are scaling crit. Sorry about this. There we go. Now we have the proper aspect on there. We are scaling crit, so that's very important. We are scaling vulnerable for the Victimize key passive, so that's important. And then we want more damage over time because we're also scaling our Andariels. And normally I wouldn't like to scale this many things, but they all kind of work in conjunction with each other just to keep popping off, exploding. So it's actually really nice, and it's really cool. For other 2 weapons here, we have 1 Uber, 1 regular unique. So we have the Ashikira's Kanjar, sure. And the main thing this is going to give us is 2 things. We want, so I don't have a great one that's high item power. I have to keep farming for this. But we really want the lucky hit chance. We can get up to 16.5. I only have a 10.5 roll. And then again, the attack speed, we can get up to 30%. I only have 22.5% roll. So not a great one there for me. And then Doombringer. And the main reason we want Doombringer is because of the lucky hit chance to do the shadow damage. That'll again act the same way as the poison damage from our Andariels. It won't proc as often. I guess it procs more often technically. It procs in a smaller area though, but it is super nice, one, to keep us alive, and two, it gives us a nice boost on our damage as well too, increasing that with like things like damage over time and stuff like that. And Eldrick's Bounty in our Paragon board, we're able to scale this damage as well too. And again, that's another source of damage. So if you're counting source of damage, we have Victimize, we have Andes, we have the Doombringer explosion, and then as we get over to our jeweler here, you're going to see the last one. So first, let's go over the amulet. We have Rapid on here. I've tested around between accelerating and Rapid. I think Rapid's a little better. You want to get more of those punctures out anyway, and you only get 38% from accelerating, and you also don't get it right away. You have to use the core skill first. So I would recommend Rapid here. And then we want armor, movement speed, frigid finesse. I have crowd control duration just because that's the amulet I have. I would prefer though Rancid Deadly Venom would, I think, boost our DPS even more. But now the reason we are scaling crit is right here. So we are using X-Files. I know Xarrio uses Starless Skies as a way to just scale damage. But what we're doing is we're using X-Files. First of all, it's got Lucky Hit on there. The cooldown is actually nice because we're not running cooldown anywhere else. It's got damage over time, which is good for us. And all stats is always nice as well too. Like I said, we're able to hit every Paragon node, every rare Paragon node that we need. And so what this does, you want to max roll really at the bottom here. So we got 41,000 damage basically. And this actually can crit. So as we scale our crit, as we scale the crit against frozen enemies, I've gotten this to hit to up to, I think the highest I've gotten is like 7.7 million damage just from an X-Files pop on a crit from that. So that is pretty nuts. And it's really good, and it's a really good like extra source of damage. And I think it really makes this build shine and just really adds to the DPS. Like I said, you can get huge pops with this thing. The highest, I wish I had it recorded. I think the highest I saw I got was 7.7 something million from this. But then down here for our other ring, we want the Encircling Blade, so our flurry damages all the enemies around us, just spreading everything more. And then on here, we want crit, we want poison, and then instead of damage over time, I really would like vulnerable. Unfortunately, I just don't have that ring at the moment. And like I said, if we had fire, our reses would be capped. And then we want lucky hit chance. And then that is all the skills. As far as the pet here, we are going to be using Flash of Adrenaline. It's a pretty classic pet setup at this point. Flash of Adrenaline, Tactical Duration. We're using Genesis. If you don't have Genesis, I would actually recommend using Gripping in there as well too. It'll hurt your DPS a little bit, obviously not having Genesis, but you'll still be fine, and then Gripping will pull enemies towards you. So that's nice. And then we have Tempest here, and then we're using Evernight. If you don't have Evernight, for this I would recommend actually Arching, honestly, because of the next one here, Efficiency, which is giving us a bunch of critical strike chance, and like I said, that's nice for our X-Files to be able to crit. And so for using Arching, your Tempest is going everywhere, and you're actually going to be getting more critical strike chance than we're currently running, but you just lose some DPS from not having Evernight. And then we're running Safeguard too. You can also, if you don't want to run Arching, you can also run the Fortify one as well too. This one right here, if you really want, and you can get yourself some more DR. But now, let's move on to the Paragon board. And so, starting over here, we are taking combat. Like I said, we are scaling crit. What is our crit sit at right now? I think it's, yeah, so it's close to 500. And then remember, we get an extra 25% multiplicative against frozen enemies. And you can see we're going to be freezing stuff when I show the gameplay, an absolute ton. So, this thing is all over the place. So combat down here for the crit. Then we're going to move up. We're going to take Cheap Shot because we're crowd controlling a ton of things. Then over here, we're going to take Control just enough to get that bonus because we are going to be stunning and freezing enemies. So it's nice to get that 20% multiplicative bonus. Taking a little bit of armor over there. And then we're actually going to come this way. We are taking Canny here. As you can see, we take some more crit that we're able to easily get to. We're taking Canny. This will specifically help against bosses, is really the main reason for this. And it just helps getting that non-physical damage anyway. And then next, we're actually going to come over to... Is it here next? I'm sorry, I don't think it actually matters. but yes, so it is here next. But you're going to be hitting both anyway. So over here though, we're taking Bane, and we're taking a bunch of points in this, scale our poison damage, and then give us a chance to do double the damage over their duration. And then over here, we're taking a bunch of vulnerable damage as well too, to help scale that Victimize. Now we are coming down here, and we're going to be taking Devious, and this is going to give us damage to elites and more armor as well too. And then next, sorry, I know it's all over the place, but this is the way I found to get all the things we need. We are taking our exploit here. We're taking 44 points into strength here to scale this vulnerable damage up to close to 70% extra, which again, if you look at our skill tree, it's multiplied by 120% of our vulnerable damage bonus. So you can see how quickly that scales. That's why it'd be really nice to have this on the ring. What am I at right now? 360, I would be over 400, which is just insane. But even though it is over 400, it only does 3% of the original damage. So you kind of need that to be really high in order to get nice explosions, but it's really easy to get high, I guess, is the best way to explain it. But anyway, so we take exploit up here for that vulnerable damage, and then finally we come down here just to take Eldritch's Bounty, and this is why we're using the dual imbuements, because we're going to get 20% multiplicative damage for that imbuements element for 9 seconds. So you can see here we have poison and shadow. The shadow is actually nice too, because you'll get explosions from it too, which will help clear mobs. And the poison, you'll just be able to do more poison damage, but really mainly we're taking these for the Eldritch's Bounty. I don't know what I said before. But that is the build. So next, we're going to jump into some gameplay. I'm probably going to craft a regular Nightmare Dungeon somewhere in the 90s, and then I will see you guys in the gameplay. Alright guys, we have some gameplay for you here. We have a tier 96 Gulran Canals. You got the affixes right here. And again, the reason I'm doing regular dungeons instead of vaults, I can clear vaults in under 2.5 minutes. I can full clear them essentially in like 3.5 minutes. But I think this is more indicative of the way the Gauntlet is actually going to look like. And I'm hoping this one contains a boss as well too, so I can show off some boss gameplay. If not, I'll throw that in there somewhere or something like that. But anyway, let's jump into it. Show off how the build works, and then talk a little bit about the build. So first thing to note, and you'll probably see here as I get hit, so this build is actually very, very squishy. And it's made that way intentionally. This is a higher tier dungeon. I'm not sure if the Gauntlet will even go up to this tier. If you do want it to be less squishy, you can easily throw on Juggernaut on your chest piece, or you can get rid of Tibalt's and use a more defensive chest piece. And I would suggest something like the Umbrus aspect, or if you need more armor, either Juggernaut or I don't know why I'm running over there. Juggernaut or Disobedience. But second thing to note here, so is this build better than my other build, the Shadow Imbue Penetrating Shot Rapid Fire build? I don't think so at this moment. One reason being, as you can see, I could take some pretty good damage there. Like I said, it's definitely not the tankiest build by any means. But one reason being is the weapon mastery glitch with crossbows, where it's just doing insane amounts of damage. I can literally one-shot Lilith without a one-shot build set up because it's doing so much damage. But besides that, I think that build is a little better right now. It is going to probably depend on layout, how much bossing we have to do. It's definitely going to be the better bossing no matter what. I forgot how annoying these slay alls are, because if you miss like one of these little idiots, you gotta go back and get them. But you can see the clear speed on this is pretty nuts. I don't want to actually grab that. Even though it's just a greed shrine, it wouldn't make too much of a difference. And I did actually grab it, but whatever. You can see we can nuke down the elites pretty easily. And I keep forgetting to use my Tibalt's, which is really stupid, but it's fine. You can see we can nuke down these guys, like so. And this is where, you know, you'll see much better clear times in a vault because everything's so condensed together. But again, I want to show off, and this wouldn't be a great run. Like, this would be something I would start because I didn't go around killing them all well enough. But I just want to show off, hopefully, something that's more indicative. So if you want really good clear time, I could probably post something after this of like some crazy clear time in like a tier 100 vault or something like that. But for now, we're going to be rocking with this gameplay. And I'm doing a pretty terrible job. I will take all that gold. But yeah, just wanted to give you an overview on how the build actually works. And you can see in something like this that has so much density how we just blow up everything, essentially. So that's why, again, like going through vaults, you would see me clear it much faster, but I'm trying to give a better example here. So what do we have to do? Does this not have a boss? Okay, so I'm probably gonna have to throw in some boss gameplay. It's kind of annoying, but it takes about 30 seconds or so if you do the boss right. Not too bad. We can nuke these guys down. For non-elites, I mean, it just wipes them, and then for elites, we're still able to nuke them down pretty fast. Maybe there is a boss in here. I'm not sure if it's just going to end after this, or we are going to get a boss. Oh, no, it's just going to end. Okay, well, that's going to be the dungeon. Kind of a weird one. Ooh, hands. What is that probably going to be? To vaults or those other crappy pants. I guess let's just max out our Bane here, and then let's do Devious. So yeah, I hope that gave you guys a good example of it. I'm going to throw in some boss gameplay probably right about now. Okay, and here's the boss gameplay I was going to be talking about. So this is a tier 94. So just to give you guys an idea of how this works. Like I said, you're not going to be insanely fast, unfortunately, killing bosses with this build. It is probably its biggest downside, as I've mentioned. We do want to get it down so we're able to crowd control it and do a bunch more damage to it. You can see we can nuke it pretty good once it's CC'd. This guy's actually super annoying when he does that. But anyway, you'll see he's about to die. I could have probably done that faster. I didn't see him as much as I could. So takes, I mean, that was a little bit longer than I probably could have. Takes about 30 seconds or so to kill these high level bosses. I could have CC'd him again if I was quicker dodging through him, but I think you get the idea in terms of bosses. And now you should be back joining me after the boss gameplay that I should have put in there probably from tier 90 or 100 whatever dungeon. But that's the build. I hope you guys enjoyed. It has some pretty crazy clear speed, does some pretty crazy damage. So I hope you guys did enjoy the video, and I'll definitely come back with some updates on this or more builds going into the Gauntlet that I could see being viable. So it's been the Butcher, and I'll see you guys in the next video.